The concrete floor was cold against my cheek, a sharp contrast to the warmth of the blood dripping from my temple. My ears rang with the residual echo of a slammed door, my wrists bound tight behind my back with plastic zip ties that bit into my skin every time I shifted. Above me, harsh fluorescent lights buzzed like distant helicopters. The metallic taste of betrayal was thick in my mouth. It had happened fast. One minute I was joking with Nathan over coffee in my office, just like we always did. Two old dogs turned corporate watchdogs, trading stories and tips, like the war was just a memory, not our resume. The next minute, the glass wall shattered inward, tactical boots thundering in like a damn storm, guns drawn, shouts loud enough to wake the dead. "Nathan Cole, you're under arrest for conspiracy, espionage, and homicide," I shouted. "What the hell is this?" But my voice was drowned out by the chaos. Nathan raised his hands, confusion etched deep on his face. I knew that look. I'd seen it in Fallujah, in Kabul. Men watching their world explode and not understanding why. That wasn't guilt. That was shock. They tackled him hard. Too hard. His face hit the floor, his cry muffled. I lunged forward, instinct, but a knee drove into my back, another fist found my head, and that was it. Down I went. "Stay down, Mr. Hart," someone barked. My name. They knew my name. This wasn't a random raid. The lead agent, a woman with ice in her eyes and a badge too shiny to be real, flashed a folder in front of my face. Photos, documents, surveillance stills, all pointed at Nathan. One showed him outside a server facility we'd secured 2 months ago. Another, a grainy image of him meeting with someone flagged in a DHS database. There was a bank transfer slip. 8 figures. "This is impossible," I said, my voice hoarse. He wouldn't." "He did," she snapped, "and we've got the proof." I locked eyes with Nathan as they dragged him out. His face was a mask of disbelief and fear, but beneath it, a silent plea. "Tom, you know me," he managed to say. "You know I didn't do this." Then he was gone. No one spoke to me after that. They cut the ties and left me there, bruised and bleeding in the ruins of my office, the remnants of our last conversation still warm in the overturned mugs. No explanations, no apologies, just wreckage. I stood eventually. My legs trembled, not from weakness, but rage. I wasn't just a consultant. I wasn't just some guy with a resume and a suit. I was trained to see through lies, to survive worse than this. Nathan was innocent. I knew it in my bones. And if the system couldn't see that, then I'd make them. The sun hadn't risen yet, but I was already pacing my apartment, nursing a black coffee and a swelling bruise on my jaw. I replayed the raid 100 times in my head, every second looped in painful clarity. They'd set Nathan up, and they'd done it clean. Too clean. Every piece of evidence neatly stacked, every narrative hole plugged. It reeked of orchestration. I pulled up our last few weeks of work. Nathan and I had just wrapped a security overhaul for a multinational biotech firm. Tight protocols, encrypted traffic, top-tier firewall architecture. Nothing had felt off, but that's the trick, isn't it? Real betrayals hide in the mundane. My laptop buzzed. An encrypted message. One of my old contacts from Langley, Frank Delano, a ghost in a suit. We hadn't spoken since Turkey. "Tom, heard about Nathan. Stay low. This stinks from 10 miles out. Not your usual setup. Watch your 6. If Frank was spooked, it meant serious players were involved. I pulled my gear out of storage. Not weapons, though God knows I had those too, but tools. Lockpicks, scanners, signal jammers, surveillance kits and spoofers, old friends from darker days. I wasn't going in guns blazing. Not yet. First, I needed answers. I started with the footage they'd shown me. Surveillance from a federal database, but something was off. The timestamp metadata was inconsistent, and the shadows didn't match the listed time of day. I ran it through a forensic analysis tool. Busted. The video was doctored, professionally but not perfectly. I found the original IP from where the data had been uploaded to the Bureau's case file. A dead trail, except for a 0.2-second lag, a real rookie mistake. I pinged the origin, Northern Virginia, a private data farm under contract with the Defense Logistics Agency. They weren't just framing Nathan, they were using federal infrastructure to do it. I drove out to see Nathan's wife, Kara. She didn't open the door at first. When she finally did, her eyes were red, and she didn't look surprised to see me. "I figured you'd come," she said, voice brittle. "He didn't do this," I told her. "I want to believe you," she whispered. "But they showed me everything. Emails, money in our accounts I didn't even know existed. Tom, what if I never really knew him?" "You did," I said, meeting her eyes, "and I'm going to prove it." She nodded, stepped aside. "Then you'll want this." She handed me a USB drive. "He gave it to me last week. Told me to hold it if anything happened. I thought he was being paranoid." I plugged it into my field laptop on the hood of my car. Encrypted, of course, but I knew Nathan's habits. The password was the coordinates of our first mission together. Inside, files, surveillance logs, emails, a trail, partial, but enough to start threading the needle. Nathan wasn't preparing for an escape. He was investigating someone, and now that someone had turned the spotlight on him. I sat back in my car, the USB drive warm in my palm. My plan was no longer to ask questions. It was time to pull the threads and see who unraveled. The server room reeked of ozone and recycled air, humming with quiet menace. I'd made it past 2 layers of physical security, spoofed the building's entry logs, and slipped into the data center under the guise of a third-party systems auditor. No one had even glanced twice. Funny how people stop looking when your badge says Compliant Security Consultant. I jacked into a terminal deep in the back row, surrounded by black racks humming like a hive. The files Nathan had left me pointed here, a shell company routing communications and cash to an unregistered offshore account. The same account used to funnel funds into Nathan's name. Clean digital laundering. But if I could trace the original author of the payment scripts, I might just get a name. 10 minutes in, the lights above me flickered. I froze, then a voice crackled behind me. "You should have stayed out, Hart." I turned slowly. Marcus Vega, my old CO, disavowed 5 years ago for unsanctioned field activities. That was a polite way of saying black ops with no leash. He looked older, leaner, like a wolf stripped to sinew and instinct. And he was smiling, that cold, precise smile that never reached his eyes. "I was wondering when you'd show your face," I said, unplugging slowly. "You always did like to clean up your own mess." "This isn't about cleaning, Tom. This is about control. Your friend, he got too close, started digging into the wrong network, the kind that doesn't tolerate curiosity. Framing him was overkill. It was efficient. He was expendable. You, though," he took a step closer, "you're a complication." I laughed once, low and bitter. "You taught me everything I know. Did you really think I wouldn't trace it back?" Vega nodded, almost proud. "I did. But I also knew you'd come alone. That was your mistake." A soft metallic click echoed. I didn't look. I didn't need to. Backup, not mine. I yanked the flash drive, jammed it into my sleeve pocket, and lunged sideways as the first shot cracked past my shoulder. The terminal exploded in sparks behind me. I rolled behind a server tower, heart thudding in rhythm with the gunfire. I wasn't armed. That was intentional. If I'd brought a gun, I'd have come to kill. I wasn't ready for that, yet. But they were trying to erase me now, and that changed everything. I ducked into a side corridor, looping wires behind me to trip motion sensors. I needed time. I needed air. I needed... My burner buzzed. One line. I have something you'll want. Meet me. The number was unlisted, but I recognized the encryption signature. Sasha, the best forensic analyst I ever worked with, until she vanished after blowing the whistle on a Pentagon slush fund. If she was back, it meant this rabbit hole went deeper than even I thought. I burst into the parking lot, tires screeching, adrenaline burning. I wasn't out, but I was close. And now I knew the name of the man who tried to erase my best friend. It was time to erase him. Sasha looked like she hadn't aged a day, but her eyes were different, sharper, darker. We met in a forgotten corner of D.C., inside an abandoned bookstore wired like a command center. Multiple monitors flickered with lines of code and surveillance feeds, a digital heart beating in the ruins of wood and dust. I knew they'd send someone, she said, not looking up. Didn't expect it to be you. They didn't send me, I said, closing the door behind me. I came for Nathan. Her fingers paused over the keyboard. He's alive? Barely, and framed. Sasha nodded slowly. Then you're going to want this. She slid over a tablet. On it, a video, grainy, time-stamped a week before Nathan's arrest. It showed Vega and two other men, one of them a DLA executive, standing outside a warehouse. A crate was being loaded into a black van. Inside, military-grade biotech, classified and stolen. They're building a privatized network, Sasha said. Paramilitary, off-books, funded by corporate kickbacks and illegal tech exports. Nathan found the leak in the chain. And now he's their fall guy, I muttered. There's more, she added, bringing up another screen. Tomorrow night, private airstrip in Delaware, final transfer of assets and departure of key personnel. After that, everything goes dark. It was the opening I needed, but I couldn't go in cold. I reached out to an old contact, Juno Reyes, ex-CIA, now running a private team specializing in high-risk extractions. She owed me a favor from a mission in Prague that left both of us with scars and silence. We met in a shipping yard under cover of fog. Juno, ever pragmatic, nodded after hearing the plan. You're insane, she said, but I'm in. We mapped it out. I'd infiltrate the control tower and disable comms. Juno's team would intercept the van. Sasha would run interference on the airfield's security system. That night, the storm came early. Rain like nails, wind that screamed. Perfect cover. I slipped past perimeter sensors, dressed in the same contractor garb they'd used in Nathan's arrest. My badge read Greystone Ops, their shell company. Inside the tower, I found the operator slumped over, unconscious from the sedative Sasha had dosed into his coffee via a hacked vending machine. We were ghosts, always. I shut down external communications, jammed all frequencies. The runway lights flickered once. Go signal. From the tower window, I watched Juno's team swarm the convoy. Flashbangs, precision, no gunfire, clean takedown. Then I saw him, Vega, stepping out of the lead vehicle, pistol raised, shouting into the chaos. I grabbed the intercom mic. Marcus, I said, my voice a ghost in his ear. It's over. He looked up straight at the tower and smiled. He reached for a remote on his belt. Too late. Juno dropped him with a tranq dart from 40 feet out. He crumpled like a puppet with its strings cut. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. The evidence we found in the vans, documents, hard drives, coded manifests, was enough to unravel their entire operation. Real names, real crimes, real consequences. I stood in the rain, watching the feds swarm in, summoned by an anonymous tip and a trail too clean to ignore. Justice wasn't a word I trusted anymore. But truth, that was something I could still believe in. The cell door slid open with a heavy clank. Nathan stepped out into the gray morning light, blinking like a man surfacing from the bottom of the ocean. He was thinner, paler, but his eyes, His eyes still held that steel, I remembered. I waited by the fence, hands in my pockets, rain beating on my jacket. He saw me, and for a long moment neither of us moved. Then he walked over, slow and deliberate. We didn't speak. No words would fit between the days he'd lost and the war I'd waged to get him back. He stopped in front of me. I handed him his old watch, scratched, faded, still ticking. "They dropped everything?" he asked. "Everything," I said. "You're clean." He looked at the watch, then at me. "And Vega?" "Gone. Black site. Off-grid. Sasha made sure of it." He nodded once, then looked past me, out over the field that stretched beyond the prison. The wind picked up. Leaves swirled. A dog barked somewhere far off. "You saved my life," he said. "No," I replied. "You saved mine. I just returned the favor." We stood there, the silence settling like dust in a room no one enters anymore. No victory speech, no handshake, no hug, just the rain, the wind, and two soldiers who knew what it cost to come back.